Oh, hi, Mark.
Hello, and welcome to the Even Worse podcast, where the films are bad and the podcast is even worse. I'm your host, Matthew Rodgers. Joining me today, Drew Miers.
What's up? This is a great intro, by the way.
Thanks, man.
Good stuff.
Appreciate it. Cade Mccarley.
How's it going, Matt?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited to talk about this film.
It's awesome, man. I'm excited to talk about it too. It was pretty interesting.
And our expert for today, Josh Summers.
How's it going, everyone?
It's going pretty well. Like I said for Cade.
Talk to the audience, actually.
Oh, okay. Right. There are people who listen to
They
this.
exist.
Maybe.
All three of them.
Thank you.
My parents and Josh's mom. Okay,
Yep.
So I refer to Josh as our expert. As you may or may not know, every episode we have an expert on our film. This week's film is Batman and Robin. So it was Josh's task to sort of look up the history and sort of how Batman has evolved over the course of its cinematic career and cinematic history. So Josh, tell us a little bit about Batman and the history of him in movies, and then sort of a little bit about Batman and Robin.
Yeah, so Batman 1989, directed by Tim Burton, it was made on a $35 million budget, and it grossed $300 million domestically.
Wow.
Great movie.
Moving on to Batman Returns, also directed by Tim Burton, 1992, $80 million budget, and it doubled with $160 million gross in the United States. 3 years later, Batman Forever is made, $100 million budget, $200 million gross in the United States. 1997, our film premiered. And then
Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin. And 10 years later, we got a new Batman movie. So for 4 films straight, every 3 years there'd be a new film. And all of a sudden, we needed a decade gap. So that maybe gives an introduction to our film.
Speaks to the terrible quality of what Batman and Robin was.
So after Tim Burton directed the wildly successful Batman in 1989, he gained total creative control over its sequel. And after directing Batman Returns, a film that was arguably a great success,
Danny DeVito, great stuff.
nearly
Penguin?
he was nearly actually fired by Warner Brothers. And one of the things that they had said was the grotesque nature, the Kafkaesque nature was hard to market to children, which of course Batman at the time it's just very family friendly, and the two films at the time weren't really that nature. The animated series had started in the early 90s, around 92, and they'd been able to market that really well. So they said, hey, Burton, maybe not direct this third one, and but we really appreciate that you started this little movement for us, so we're going to let you stay on the producer's chair.
Okay.
And they let him hand-pick the director of the third and fourth film.
Joel Schumacher.
Joel Schumacher ended up being his hand-picked director.
I did not know that.
So, Schumacher was allowed moderate control over the project due to Burton still being behind the wheel.
Okay.
And Batman Forever was created. Val Kilmer, Nicole Kidman, Tommy Lee Jones, and Jim Carrey.
Val Kilmer replaced Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, right. Michael Keaton was a little bit miffed off that Tim Burton, who they'd become very good friends throughout the shooting of the two Batman movies, wasn't
And
actually...
Beetlejuice, of course.
Right, there you go.
Yeah.
Wasn't in... So he decided to exit the project. They pretty much begged him to stay, but they couldn't keep him. So
okay.
Val Kilmer has really gotten a lot of traction over the mid-90s especially. And so he stars in Batman Forever. And Batman Forever is a pretty moderate success. It's nothing on the course of 1989's Batman. But at the same time, losing your best director for the franchise, it's a good step, or it's a step in the right direction.
Or the wrong direction.
Unfortunately, you're right. It was the wrong direction. Tim Burton, after the release of Batman Forever, actually leaves the Warner Brothers Batman franchise altogether.
Wow.
And the studio decides they're going to restrict control over Schumacher's filmmaking abilities. One of the things that they'd still argue with, that even though Batman Forever was a little bit towards the lighter side, that they needed to go all the way. That if the films were going to be making as much money, then we have to go in a direction where we can merchandise it even more. So the product that we get is Batman and Robin, a film that is arguably the worst Batman film of all time, arguably one of the worst films of all time. So now let's get into the nitty-gritty about Batman and Robin.
Which, like in last episode, we recorded the intro and then took a break to watch the film and then came back. We've actually already seen the film.
Unfortunately,
Unfortunately, we have already
we've
seen the film. So we are going to jump straight into talking about the film. Okay, Drew, what are your first impressions of
All
this
right. My quote on this movie.
Okay.
This movie sucks ice. It is terrible. The puns in this movie, all the way throughout the movie, are just terrible. All the things, especially Robin. Robin's got the worst. These little one-liners that he thinks are funny. He starts from like the first line of the movie.
Chicks dig the car.
Chicks dig the car. Yeah.
God.
Awful.
Cade, what about you? First impressions?
So I'm a huge Batman fan, and
Nerd,
when
yeah.
I was a kid, I watched half of this movie, but I realized I don't want to watch this anymore. It kind of sucks. But I mean, I saw all the things. So I hadn't finished this movie, I hadn't seen it in a long time. So I was basically going in with a fresh idea on how to view this movie. And there's a scene in this movie where I just completely lost it, and that's when Robin takes off his rubber lips, and I'm just, and that's towards the end of the movie, so it's already bad at that point. But it really was just, at some points it was so bad that I didn't even want to watch it anymore. Like our last week with The Room, I always want to watch The Room. This one is just different for me. It was just different in the way that I guess it just kind of shit all over Batman, and I didn't like that at all. So
you're sort of talking about, Batman is sort of ruined in this film, right?
yeah, oh, of course.
He is known as the world's greatest detective, and
Oh,
he is
God.
a fool in this movie.
Complete
a
fool.
bumbling fool. I can't express how frustrated I am, because I loved this movie as a kid. This was my favorite movie ever
Oh,
as a
wow.
kid. I owned this movie on DVD. I spent my birthday money to buy this movie because I loved it. And now looking back, I'm like, Batman, he's a mockery in this movie.
Complete idiot.
Especially after seeing Christian Bale and Ben Affleck, and then going back and watching Michael Keaton. He's the world's greatest detective, and here he is, just portrayed as an idiot.
What?
Yeah, complete idiot.
I think one of the things we find in this film is that none of the characters in the movie are like their comic book counterparts.
at all.
No, yeah, and especially Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze, who's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger in the film,
The Terminator.
who gets top billing, which is the second time this
I
has
want to come
happened.
back to Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
continue
that's a
talking
good
about
comment.
Mr. Freeze.
I like that.
It's the second time it's happened in the Batman films
Jack
where
Nicholson.
the villain gets top billing over the
Wow.
over Batman. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, I mean, not a terrible pick. He could have maybe done it.
I thought he did a great job.
but
I think
he-
he's superb in this film.
I think it depends on what you want. I think if you want a Mr. Freeze that is sympathetic, that the audience can feel generally bad for, then you can't have
And that's what Mr. Freeze is.
an Austrian man,
Bodybuilder.
who every other line is a pun. I think if what they were going for was what we got, then sure. But honestly, it's not really representing the character of Mr. Freeze in the front.
Who is the character of Mr. Freeze, at least in the comics?
Mr. Freeze is a very sympathetic character, so they get the general storyline of Mr. Freeze right in here, that his wife is, cryogenically frozen, and he needs to find a cure for her. So, but in the comics and he's just a much more sympathetic character, in that you see why he's doing it. He's not just trying to take over the world. He just genuinely wants to help his wife, and he genuinely wants to do this for her, but he just goes about it the complete wrong way.
I think one of the problems was the only reasons we would have been able to find out that he actually cared or was doing it for his wife would be these scenes where he just explicitly says it. There's no drive behind his character. You can't see any loving relationship. He doesn't seem like a real person at all. It's just very much, he's doing this because he says he's doing it, but we don't see that internal drive within, those internal emotions that we're supposed to see in a good villain or a tragic villain that we had talked about while we were watching.
So sort of off of that, there's the thing in storytelling, it's show, don't tell. And Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze is sort of being my wife is dying, I need to help her. He just states that in the film. And if you analyze this whole script, every character...
Every character. I was just about to say, everyone does that.
I don't know how many times I heard you guys make the joke during the film, Holy Exposition Batman.
Yes.
Yeah, holy exposition, Batman.
This film is filled with probably the worst exposition.
Oh, it's pretty bad.
It's terrible.
And we watched The Room last week. That has some pretty bad exposition. But this I think it might take the cake.
They would just state what they wanted to do.
Exactly.
Josh, do you know who wrote this film? Do we know who wrote it?
We
Was
looked
it
it up during the
Schumacher?
film.
Let me
No,
check.
it wasn't. It was someone that had also written Lost in Space. The one with who is it?
So according to
Doesn't
our
matter.
handy
Gary
dandy
IMDb.
IMDb,
Thanks to the internet.
Akiva Goldsman wrote this film.
I have
Damn
never
you,
heard of
Kiva.
him.
Check out his listing.
Which is crazy because he's received an Academy Award for Best Adapted Screenplay.
For what?
For A Beautiful Mind.
Yeah.
Wow,
That's a great
That's
movie.
So the guy who
insane.
wrote A Beautiful Mind wrote this
Yes.
terrible script.
See, that's why I think this was the producer error. I think what they wanted was something for kids, something
Sure.
really small, and how many types of machinery, weapons did we see in this movie? Obviously to sell
Tons.
toys.
This is a marketing and merchandising film.
And I think
Poison Ivy. Sorry,
No,
go
go
ahead.
for it, go for it.
Poison Ivy has a line in the film that says, "Every single Bane always comes with me when they sell the action figures," or something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Right.
So it's easily to see that this film was completely made for the merchandise.
I think it exemplifies, though, Matt, you actually pointed it out first, and then we all started realizing it towards the end of the film. There is a costume change that all the characters go through,
yes.
and there's absolutely no time for them to change. There's absolutely no reason for them to change, but all of a sudden they're wearing slightly different colors, slightly different uniforms, and that kind of goes with the toys, the merchandising that. Hey, if we make them change costumes, then we can sell more toys or different toys.
And that's why it's done now too. We went from Captain America, the first Avenger, and then in Winter Soldier, he had a completely different costume, and then in Civil War has a completely different costume.
Iron Man,
All of these characters have different costumes. Every Iron Man film and every film he's in, there's a different Iron Man suit. It's because they can sell new
But
toys.
they did this every scene
Yeah.
instead of every movie.
Poison Ivy went through what, 6 costumes?
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
She was like the scientist, and then she became like Poison Ivy, where she
The journalist with their glasses, that was one.
And the gorilla costume. Don't forget about the gorilla
Yes,
costume.
yes, of course.
And since we're on the topic of the costumes, we have to talk about the bat nipples.
The bat nipples.
And the bat crotches.
The
It's-
bad boobs,
This,
everything.
the film starts with just what I don't want to see, which is like people putting on tight pants.
Homoerotic
Close-ups.
fiction with Batman where you can see George Clooney.
Well, technically for
Chris
you,
O'Donnell.
for only you, it's
Right,
homoerotic.
right,
For,
of course.
for the
Of
male
course,
gender.
yes. Yes.
I don't know. Maybe they were like, we gotta give something to the women who are gonna be
So
forced
George
to.
Clooney.
Joel Schumacher is gay.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Joel Schumacher is gay.
Yeah.
Now, he's been asked, did you deliberately give this film a homoerotic a tone?
Uh-huh.
And he said, no, I didn't do that, or at least that's what I'm seeing on.
Listen, it's really easy to
on-
claim that you didn't do something.
Right, exactly.
Especially when it gets backlash, and then you say, "Oh, it wasn't the intention," or "Oh no, I didn't do that."
Let's talk about how they define gravity throughout the film. I mean, like when Robin jumps. I mean, okay, granted, I know he's a circus guy, or
Yeah,
whatever.
trapeze.
He's jumping 10 yards in the air, like he's
Yep.
flying. It's
Yeah.
crazy, and that happens throughout. Like not just Robin, like Mr. Freeze does it.
Yeah,
and he's
oh,
wearing,
yeah.
he's wearing a metal ass suit. Like
Yeah,
what is he
and
doing?
then but when he jumps out of the rocket
Oh,
ship, he's got
he's
his
got those-
butterfly
yeah.
wings.
Oh, and then
now.
and I love how they go surfing down through midair.
They
They just
would,
like
they would just fall.
Surfing through air.
Those rocket ship doors do nothing to like help them fly through the air.
I think you bring up a good point. While I'm thinking about that, and I don't think this is really a Batman movie. I mean,
Really?
if you think about the amount of screen time that Batman just has by himself, it amounts to basically 4 or 5 minutes. Batman by himself. Well, obviously they
if
call it
that.
Batman and Robin for a reason. Chris O'Donnell that generated a lot of publicity for the film, but the reason we don't see any character development in Batman, and the reason his character is a little bit tarnished, is because we don't ever see him alone.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I just found a quote, from Joel Schumacher, and I think this can tie into a lot of things about the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He says this, and I quote, "I had no idea that putting nipples on the Batsuit and Robin suit were going to spark international headlines. The bodies of the suits come from ancient Greek statues, which display
gosh.
perfect bodies."
Let's talk about ancient Greece
That's
for
a
a
good
second.
tie-in.
ancient Greek statues.
I think
There were
I
about-
think even talking about ancient Greek statues and then transitioning into just what Gotham looks like in general.
Yeah.
What were you
Yeah.
saying about the statues?
Well, yeah, exactly. We're talking about Gotham.
They're-
There's just everywhere. There's these statues of these just like
And they're
they're
huge.
massive.
Giant.
They are massive. I mean, the road, they're over these skyscrapers. They're just as tall as these skyscrapers. Some even taller.
They're like holding up bridges.
Yeah,
And it's
I think
exactly.
the problem is most of Gotham is supposed to be kind of slummy, while
poor and like
well,
really
every
stick
time,
together.
every other angle that you see of Gotham, there is a 1,000-foot statue
Yeah.
Yeah.
of a Greek god or goddess or etc.
It's like $1 billion statue.
Exactly.
And you see 60 of them.
Yeah, I think the whole feel of Gotham just felt so off from going from
I
Tim
wonder-
Burton's like
Dark and
Noir
gritty.
type.
Noir, yeah.
Yeah,
And I wonder
type
what
of-
like time period they like intended this movie to be.
Well,
I
there's
mean,
a lot of
obviously not-
futuristic
It
things
looks
that
a little
happen.
futuristic, yeah.
So that's why
Yeah.
I wonder, and we were talking about this during the film, if this is part of the other three Batmans, because one would argue that it's completely different.
I
Gotham's a
argue
completely different
that-
city.
That the Schumacher and the Burton universes seem to be separate, and maybe not just in character development. We talked about how Alfred is portrayed by the same actor for all 4 films,
Which is
Right.
yeah,
but
not the
at the
only
same
actor.
time, Gotham is just a completely different entity itself. You go from the black, the darkness, the sharp contrast to all of a sudden all neon, all loud music, all
Yeah.
very poppy. So that contrast is
And I
kind
think
of
that goes with trying to the appeal to the kids.
yeah, sure, colorful.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. And can we talk about George Clooney in this movie? Because
Go
I
for
think
it.
George Clooney gets a little. Not many people when they talk about Batman and Robin, they're like, "Oh, well, I mean, George Clooney was in it. He was Batman, but he's not the mainstay talking point of the film." I think George Clooney was just collecting a paycheck here.
Oh, of course.
And he doesn't put any type of effort into this movie whatsoever.
Phoned his
He,
performance incompletely.
he just he's just going through the motions while the other people actually are like like Chris O'Donnell, how bad he is, at least he's he looks like he's
He's
trying.
Yeah.
He's not doing a very good job.
Yeah,
He's trying.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is being Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Again, I think he did a great job in this film.
Yeah. Uma Thurman is going complete batshit crazy. We'll get on her later. But George Clooney is just being completely dreadful.
See, I kind of have a problem with that point that you made. That you're right. You're obviously right. But this film was George Clooney's big break away from television. He had not starred in a feature film.
Well, he's starting from Dusk Till Dawn.
Which was after.
Really?
Yeah,
I thought it was.
Dusk Till Dawn is
Really look it
is
up.
I'll look
past,
it up.
Which is a great movie. We will,
Great
not, we
movie.
will not be
Yeah,
watching
yes.
From Dusk Till Dawn on the Even Worse podcast.
no, actually, no. It was the year before.
Yeah, it was the year before. But this wasn't a very big movie.
No, it wasn't a big movie. It's a fantastic film.
yes.
Don't get me wrong. And Clooney's arguably good in that film, but
Yes.
I think one of the things is that this is a huge role. Being Batman,
Yeah.
I mean, even back then, Batman's just a huge possibility for an actor to become,
Right,
just
right.
to push himself over the edge.
I mean, he's American cultural
Exactly.
icon.
And then you just see him phoning it in. It seems
Yeah.
like.
And so I'm trying to remember sort of George Clooney's performance, and I remember very little of it. I don't know if
He didn't have much lines.
I remember
Yeah,
his
that's-
turtleneck. That's about his turtleneck was the only thing I remember.
Yeah, and I mean, he has a girlfriend in the film that we don't even. Did they even say her name?
They
in
say
the
her name
film?
once.
I think there is so little Batman
And the
in
story,
this film.
yeah,
Like
the
you were
story
saying.
doesn't revolve around Batman
No.
at all. I mean,
I get that they
honestly,
call
the
him
story
Batman
could probably
Robin.
go without him.
We could call this Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
And
And
it would
Robin, I mean, Robin's
Yeah, Robin's-
has more to do in
It
this
should be
film
called
than
Robin
Batman
and
does.
Batman.
That's true. You can't forget
Honestly,
about
there's
Robin.
just such a clout of characters that you probably needed to take Batgirl or Ivy away to make it a really interesting, centered film.
All right.
And we haven't even gotten to the main
Batgirl.
plot point, or maybe the main side plot point, that Alfred's pretty much about to die.
Alfred is
just for no reason in particular.
that's just about to get
Exactly. There is no reason for him dying except they're like, well, we can't kill Freeze.
And that's what I've noticed, and I was going to say, this brings us back to The Room. I think what the producers and the writers are like, well, if we make someone like near death, this is going to heighten.
Yeah, it's
the
gonna
thing.
heighten the tension.
And,
you
and it
know?
does the exact opposite
Yeah.
to me.
I was like, well, because you can't kill a character like Alfred.
No, of course not.
I don't think you can do it in that way where it seems very cheap and
And
very
of course he
forced.
didn't die because it is a kid's show, and
Yeah.
of course magic's going to happen and
course,
save
yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
But
I think it's time to talk about Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy.
Uma Thurman.
Who,
Let's talk about
as a
it.
kid, I was very attracted to. And as a 18-year-old
Still
person,
am.
am still very attracted to. I think Uma Thurman's performance in this film is awesome. I think she was given a terrible script, but I think she still did a great job.
I made this point while we were watching the film. You can talk about how, this is the director's fault or it's the script's fault and it's not the actor, but at some point, the actors have to realize that what they're doing is shit. And but maybe they like to, when actors are in a bad movie, they like to ignore it because they're getting a paycheck for it. I don't know, but at some point, I mean, George Clooney, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Uma Thurman, we've seen them. They're talented people.
Yes.
They can be in good movies. They can be very talented. They are very talented. They have to be able to realize that this is shit. And maybe they do, and they just ignore it because they want that paycheck. But that's an interesting thing, you know. Why do actors keep doing these shit?
I just think Uma Thurman was just a bad choice for Poison Ivy.
Really?
I love Uma Thurman.
So
I thought she was great in all her in Pulp Fiction. Loved her. Kill Bill. I thought she was great. I just didn't think she was a good fit for Poison Ivy. I think Poison Ivy's got to be someone more manipulative. I just don't see. I don't see Uma Thurman as a very manipulative person in the way. She's more of a fierce.
Yeah, I agree because I think like as great as she did in this film, I do think Poison Ivy still needed to be more seductive but also smart. I think we saw the smart part of Poison Ivy here, and I think Uma Thurman did a great job, but I think there is some sort of like smooth and alluring, almost like Catwoman-esque part of Poison Ivy that was missed out.
Yeah, I think she's just in this film. She doesn't need to be in this film. If
I agree.
This film didn't need to be made.
And like almost all Batman films have about two, maybe except the first Batman 1989, have two villains most of the time. You know, Batman Returns has Penguin and Catwoman. Batman Forever has Two-Face and Riddler. Batman Begins, Scarecrow, Ra's al Ghul, and just keeps going
Joker,
on.
Two-Face.
So I think they just
really interesting.
and they just want to have two villains, like two main villains, but they didn't know how to juggle all these people. So I believe that she did not need to be in this film, and every time she was on there, I'm like, I don't give a shit.
But you know what villain didn't need to be in this film?
Bane.
Bane.
Can I talk about Bane for a second? Y'all can
Go
say
for
what
it.
you want about Bane. How he died was he basically got deflated like a beach ball.
Yeah.
This
Which
is like
his
Veruca
origin
Salt,
story
like-
was being inflated like a beach ball.
Yeah. And the thing about Bane, in the comics, Bane is described as one of, if not the most intelligent person Batman fights. And in this movie,
He's the opposite of Spy Boy. He's Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, he's Frankenstein's monster, exactly. He's just not Bane at all.
I will
And
say he looked like Bane.
he does look like Bane. I mean,
they got that down.
looks more like Bane than Tom Hardy did.
Which to the kids doesn't matter about acting as much as the visuals.
Yeah,
Right.
true, very true.
That was spot on.
That goes
He
back
was-
to the pretty colors.
He was only in this movie because they can get another action figure out of it.
Absolutely, and it's a really cool looking action figure.
Yeah.
The
of
larger
course.
your action figure, the more you can charge for it.
Exactly.
The more overbuild your character, exactly.
I think that Bane in this film really did not add anything,
No.
and I think honestly, Batman didn't add anything. I know
No.
we sort of already talked about this,
God.
but
Bane by himself probably did more than Batman did in this film.
How do you make a Batman film where Batman's irrelevant in it?
Yeah.
That's the real question. I couldn't understand, and that's what really pissed me off about this movie.
You
is just,
either have to put an emphasis on Batman or you have to put it on Bruce Wayne, and this film did neither. There was Bruce Wayne wasn't even a character in this. It was just Batman, and that was embarrassing.
I don't even think it was. I think it was just George Clooney. It was just George Clooney. I mean,
Right.
there was no difference between when he was playing Bruce Wayne, when he was playing Batman. You know, Bruce Wayne and Batman have to be two separate. A good actor who plays them, and my favorite person who's ever played Batman is, this might be cheap to say, but I love Kevin Conroy.
Let's go around. What is your favorite Batman? This is kind of off topic, but it's always interesting to see.
Although I really enjoyed, actually really enjoyed Ben Affleck, even though I didn't like Batman v Superman, I have to say Michael Keaton is my favorite iteration of the character.
I think I'm most familiar with Christian Bale, so I'm going to go with Christian Bale because I think he brought something new to the role. I think you can mock the but he brought new dimensions. I think he was the most believable Bruce Wayne
Yeah.
we've seen.
He was a great Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, great Bruce Wayne. I think Ben Affleck is going to be an even better Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
But I just haven't seen enough of Ben Affleck,
right.
so I'm going to say
I
Christian
think-
Bale because of familiarity.
Ben Affleck is my answer. It was Michael Keaton until Batman vs Superman came out. And I'll tell you why I think it's Ben Affleck is because I think that person was put on Earth to be Batman. I think he just looks like Bruce Wayne.
He does.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, it's got to be Kevin Conroy.
Who-
That might be cheating, but he was the voice actor in Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, which was a theatrically released film. Great film.
And
if
the
you haven't
animated
seen it.
series as
And the
well.
animated series, of course.
And several video games.
the Batman Arkham video games. He's the voice for that.
Well,
and
like
also my
Clint
favorite
Baker's
Joker.
Batman.
My favorite Joker is Mark Hamill,
Hamill, sure.
of course.
Again, who did the voice. So
Yes.
Cade really likes these voices.
I love the voice actors, but you can tell distinctively in Kevin Conroy's voice that when he's Bruce Wayne, he has a different voice than when he
Right.
is Batman. George Clooney is just George Clooney in this film, and he is nobody else. He is just George Clooney.
And I think that was a lack of stylistic direction.
Yes.
I think
The only thing that
to-
didn't have style.
To sum up this film, I think the problem is that they couldn't decide if they wanted this to be a comedy or a drama.
Right.
I think there were times where they tried to bring out dramatic moments and it just didn't work because of all the stupid like when Mr. Freeze was like looking at the video of his wife and he was just like we were trying to feel bad for him and it's like we're not gonna feel bad for you after you just said some stupid ass pun about
exactly.
ice.
Well, he watches that movie, and then one of his henchmen comes in.
Yeah.
He's like, "I hate when people I hate when people stop or
Yeah,
talk during
he's
the movie."
watching an emotional scene, and his very next line, he starts to cry. His very next line is
He
a
shoots
pun.
a henchman.
And
Yeah.
then, he shoots someone. He shoots someone that doesn't do
in
anything
a very
to him.
comedic manner.
Exactly.
There is okay, so you talked about rubber lips, right?
Right.
I think that is a great example of a really dramatic moment that was ruined by comedy because he kisses Poison Ivy and we had seen Poison Ivy kill
So he's like, he's
6 or
dead.
7 people and we're like, oh my gosh, Robin is gonna die.
Yeah.
Batman and Robin no more.
It just got epic and then of course
And then he just rips off these rubber lips.
Rubber
It's like,
lips.
rubber lips, or whatever the line is.
God.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I think you could sum this film up in the best way possible of saying that Batman and Robin is the best episode of the 1960s Batman TV show. And that's what it looks like. That's what it feels like. And that's what I take away
Which,
from
if
it.
you
Holy
haven't
remake, Batman.
if you haven't seen the original Batman, you should definitely go back and
It's on
watch
Netflix.
it.
Please God watch it.
It is beautiful in its own way. It is its own bad
Sharper
movie. in
It
a
really
sense.
did more than ways than not remind me of the 67, right? 67
Right.
version, the movie. All right, so let's talk about next week.
So next week we are watching The Wicker Man.
But not the bees!
Exactly. I remember Cade suggested this in our original pitch.
And not the original one.
not the original pitch.
The Nicolas Cage
The Nicolas-
2006 remade version.
I had no idea what The Wicker Man was, and all he had to say was, not the bees! And I was like, I can't wait to watch it. So next week, we are recording the podcast for The Wicker Man. We have a new space, better sound quality.
It's a lot better
We're
next
very excited about that.
So
TF.
you can follow us on Twitter at TEW Podcast because the Even Worse Podcast is too long to fit in the at.
There you go.
You can subscribe to us on SoundCloud. We're also posting all of the podcasts on YouTube in case you want to watch them there. You can just look up the Even Worse Podcast and you can find us. So I'm Matthew,
I'm Drew.
I'm Cade.
Josh.
and this has been the Even Worse Podcast, where the films are bad and the podcast is even worse. Signing off.